Kebajikan. The Honorable Deputy Chairman of Policy Studies and Public Administration Innovation of NIPA, Dr. Triwidodo Wahyu Utomo, SHMA. Our guest of speakers, Professor Agus Pramusinto, Chairman of KASN and IAPA, Professor Alex B. Brillantes from University of the Philippines, Adriana Plasencia Diaz from National Public Administration Institute, Mexico, Bapak Muzani Muhammad Mansur, SA MPM, as moderator, all distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. We are so delighted and honored to welcome every single one of you to this International Policy Analyst Virtual Public Lecture co-organized by Lembaga Administrasi Negara and Tanoto Foundation. The main theme of today's event is the role of policy analysts in accelerating the transformation of digital-based bureaucracy. To commence today's event, I would like to invite all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to take a straight pose on your seats for National Anthem, Indonesia Raya. Tanoto Foundation. The main theme of today's Ladies and gentlemen, to formally open our webinar, I would like to give the virtual floor to Dr. Triwidodo Wahyu Utomo, Deputy Chairman of Policy Studies and Public Administration Innovation of NIPA, to deliver his keynote speech and welcome address. Bapak Triwidodo, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Reni. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning for all of you. The Honorable Professor Agus Pramusinto, Chairman of Indonesian Civil Service Commission, Distinguished Professor Alex Brillantes, National College of Public Administration and Governance, University of the Philippines, Distinguished Dr. Adriana Plasencia, National Institute of Public Administration, Mexico, distinguished Tanoto Foundation leader or representatives, all of our colleagues, moderator, policy analysts, academician, and all attendees of this virtual public lecture. First of all, I would like to welcome all of the participants and speakers in this international virtual public lecture conducted by Indonesian National Institute of Public Administration in collaboration with Tanoto Foundation. This is the 12th series of virtual public lecture in 2022, and we present the topic of the role of policy analysts in accelerating the transformation of digital-based bureaucracy. Let's start with an inspiring book written by Jamie Susskind entitled Future Politics, Living Together in a New World Transformed by Technology. Susskind underlined the political shift of human life. The central question of the politics in the 20th century was how much of our collective life should be determined by the state. But recently, the question will be very much different, which is to what extent should our lives be directed and controlled by digital systems. Digital transformation or information technology itself is considered as one of the factors that causes disruption, in addition to the pandemic and millennial generation. These three are often known as triple disruption. It is these three disruptions that created VUCA situation globally: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. This VUCA has brought about a very big change. In Indonesia, for example, 73.7% of Indonesian adults are now using the internet, and every virtual move they make, such as shopping, connecting with friends, sending work emails, streaming videos, and so on, is recorded. Moreover, according to Louis Lloyd, in his book entitled Policymaking in a Digital World, by 2020, the vast majority of people in the world will be able to access almost any information, communicate and collaborate with almost anyone, and broadcast their opinions globally from any location at any time and at a low cost. All of this has changed the nature of communication, where individuals can now communicate directly with the public without having to rely on conventional media, such as newspaper or television, and messages can be personalized and targeted to a level that was previously impossible. Under such a new way of communication, the amount of data is doubled. In 2019, for example, human activities around the world generate 45 zettabytes of data and will increase to 175 zettabytes by 2025. On average, humans generate 2.5 exabytes per day. Data will be the most crucial thing in the information age as we live on today. The world will be driven by data, and data-driven world will be always on, always tracking, always monitoring, always listening, always watching, as well as always learning. Data will be needed for all aspects of human life, including policy making in the bureaucracy. Talking about utilization of data in the policy making process in Indonesia, we must admit that this is still very weak. There are several factors influencing the situation. For example, weak research culture in the universities and government agencies, low budget allocation to support research functions, very limited knowledge brokers, as well as the ineffective role of research institutions. Until recently, we are still struggling to bring the ideal world closer to reality. Ideally, policymaking should be formulated based on data, evidence, and research. Unfortunately, we still often observe public policies that are influenced by intuition, common sense, ideology, public opinion, political interest, etc. Database or evidence-based in policymaking is highly demanded to increase the quality of government policies. Furthermore, evidence-based policy becoming an increasingly important practice in public administration in order to prevent from the occurrence of unintended consequences of policy. Also, to prevent from the possibility of policy failures. To conclude, Despite all the opportunities, Indonesia is still facing big challenges in realizing digital transformation and promoting evidence-based policy making. Therefore, a course of action is fundamentally needed. Reform in research culture, funding policy, collaboration, and reducing bureaucratic constraints are some recommendations to be bear in mind in the future. In this regard, policy analysts play a very important role in providing information and problem-solving oriented policy options. For these reasons, systematic and continuous efforts to improve the quality of policy analysis are urgently needed. Ladies and gentlemen, by conducting this event, we would like to thank for all the support from various parties in this virtual public lecture. We are also grateful for the kindness of the speakers who have taken the time to provide knowledge and enlightenment regarding the role of policy analysts in accelerating digital-based bureaucratic transformation. We are pleased to have Professor Agus Pramusinto for being a strategic partner of LAN in various activities. Also Professor Alec Brillantes for constantly side-by-side works with us through Europa and his networking. Also Dr. Adriana Plasencia Diaz, our new colleague from NIPA, Mexico. These are speakers whom rarely we could listen to in one place at a time. This would be a great opportunity for us to discuss about wide-ranging experiences and knowledge from them. We also would like to thank Tanoto Foundation for their full support for VPL, which has been held since 2021. The good cooperation between Tanoto and NIPA has helped NIPA in facilitating competency development for policy analysts. The role of policy analysts is expected to encourage the improvement of the quality of public policies in Indonesia. So, have a very happy and very challenging discussion. I thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Bapak Triwidodo, for the wonderful keynote speech and welcome address. Before we proceed, we're going to have a photo session. So I would like to kindly invite Bapak Triwidodo, Bapak Yogi, Professor Agus, Professor Alex, Adriana, and all participants, Bapak Muzani also, to activate your camera. Okay, the host, ready? Okay, on the count of three. On the count of three, 1, 2, 3. One more time by making the L sign on your screen. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are now proceeding to today's agenda, which is a plenary session. Joining us with us today, 3 amazing speakers who will be sharing their knowledge and experiences in relation to the role of policy analysts in accelerating the transformation of digital-based bureaucracy in their respective countries. Without further ado, I would like to cordially invite moderator of this session, Bapak Muzani Muhammad Mansur, SAMPM. He is a policy analyst from National Institute of Public Administration, Indonesia. Bapak Muzani, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Reni. Yeah, good morning, everybody. How are we today? Okay, Honorable Chairman, Deputy Chairman of Policy Studies and Public Administration Innovation, Bapak Triwidodo, thank you for a very resourceful opening speech or opening remarks before we proceed to the panel session. And also a warm welcome to our distinguished panels. First of all, let me introduce our first speaker, which is Professor Agus Pramusinto. Good morning, Prof. Agus. How are you today?
Good morning, everyone. Very good.
Okay, and I have been informed that our second speaker, Professor Alex Virantes, will be joining us maybe a little bit late. So he will join us maybe in between the sessions. And then our third speaker, Miss Adriana Plasencia Diaz. Buenos días, señorita. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. Thank you so much for
Bien.
having me
Yes,
here. It's a very nice Spanish. Thank you.
I had many Spanish friends.
Oh, that's,
Yeah,
you have
especially
learned very
Mexican.
good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and also we would like to say hello to the Center of Policy Analysts Center of Pak Yogi Suwarno. Pak Yogi, yeah, thank you for conducting this VPL session. Yeah, this is at least I think it's the second year for us to conduct, and at the end of the year we conducted by NIPA, National Institute of Public Administration. This is our 12th, and it will be in English, and hopefully, and people will be able to have an international experience. And then we would also thank Tanoto Foundation, Representative Pa Inga and Buneti. Welcome to the seminar. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself. My name is Muzani Mansur. I will be the moderator for today. So if you have any questions or any remarks before concerning the panelists, please address maybe through the Slido as the MC Mbak Reni explained. And then I think it's time for us to start, yeah, because I think if I talk too much, maybe it's too much, yeah. But actually, about the topic itself, maybe I would like to a little bit how the role of policy analysts in accelerating the transformation of digital-based bureaucracy. I think the topic is very up to date, and I think we all feel it, right? Especially in Indonesia, everybody is, I don't know, if we don't have data or our Wi-Fi is gone, what happens to us? And also, also as a government official, all government institutions must support or have an application at least, like if we apply for immigration, if we apply for KTP, or we apply for anything, I think everything now is online. So, and then maybe, yeah, Prof. Agus and Bu Adriana, Miss Adriana, and also Prof. Alex will also share the experience. I think without further ado, yeah, each panelist will be allocated around 20 minutes, okay? And 20 minutes for each panel. And then maybe that will take about 1 hour. And then it will be a Q&A. And I hope we have a insightful and very good seminar. Yeah. Okay, I would please welcome the first panelist, Prof. Agus Pramusinto. Yeah, please, Pak Agus. And then I would maybe should I maybe the curriculum vitae a little bit. Prof. Agustinto Pramusinto is currently the head of KSSN. It's the Komisi Aparatur Sipil Nasional, then and also the head of AIPA. I think that's it. And maybe various publications and also, I think, books Prof. Agus has published. So without further ado, please, Prof. Agus, the floor is yours or the screen is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, the Honorable Dr. Triwidodo, Deputy for Policy Studies and Innovation from the National Institute of Public Administration, and also distinguished speakers, Dr. Adriana Plasencia Diaz from Instituto Nacional de Administración Pública, Mexico, and also Dr. Alex Virantes. He is the Secretary General of Eastern Regional Organization for Public Administration, and also Professor of NCPEC, Professor of Public Administration from NCPEC, National College of Public Administration and Governance, University of the Philippines. all participants and ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning. Let me share my PowerPoint here. Yeah. So first of all, I would like to thank the National Institute of Public Administration for giving me the opportunity to speak at this great forum. And the theme I would like to convey is the role of policy analysts in Indonesia, challenges and improvements. I'm not going to focus on digital transformation because in my opinion, every policy analyst has different skills or expertise. And thus attending this forum are also policy analysts with a variety of skills. So let the analysts focus on their individual skills. And for today, I would like to talk about the challenges and improvements that must be made for policy analysts in Indonesia. Let me start with Indonesia vision. As we know that we have a sort of dream that in 2045, when this country turns 100 years old, we must become a nation with high culture and independence in science and technology. We must have an advanced and sustainable economy so that our children or grandchildren continue to enjoy the natural wealth that we have. And our development must be equitable and inclusive so that it can be enjoyed not only by people of Jakarta, Surabaya, Bandung, or Medan, but also by our brothers and sisters who are in remote areas far from the noise of development. And of course, we also really hope that our country will become a strong and clean democracy. And to achieve those all, we need a great bureaucracy. Gradually, we have managed the bureaucracy so that in the future, we will have a world-class bureaucracy. A bureaucracy that really serves, a bureaucracy that is agile and moving, has a real impact on society. And as mentioned by our President Jokowi, birokrasi harus berdampak. Oh, the bureaucracy must have an impact and on the society. But until now, we still have big homework. We still need to improve the condition of our bureaucracy. Indicators that are still poor can be seen from many things, such as the Corruption Perception Index, the Government Effectiveness Index, the Ease of Doing Business Index, and the Global Competitiveness Index, and others. And we have to improve all these things, all these indicators. And other homeworks is related to the development agenda that we have agreed upon, namely the Millennium Development Goals and also Sustainable Development Goals, consisting of 17 indicators or criteria. And we still have to overcome many things, such as poverty, hunger, unemployment, education, health, damaged environment, inequality, climate, and so on and so on. So in this, it is in this context that our role as policy analysts is needed. And of course, we must be present and offer various alternatives, ideas to improve the condition of this nation. We are all needed to have policymakers. As a policy analyst, we have to remember that the dynamic of change are very fast. There is globalization, international competition, public pressure, international development agenda, financial crisis, COVID-19, technological disruption, and others. And policymakers, we believe that we're definitely confused about all these problems. That's why they need reliable policy analysts and policy advisors like everybody attending this webinar. As a policy analyst, we should be busy with the following activities on our daily basis. Consult program administrators and other interested parties to identify policy needs, review and develop new and existing policies and legislation, prepare briefing papers and recommendations, assess impacts, financial implication and possibility of policies, and also identify ethical, legal, or political issues for research analysis. And also we can also provide advice and recommendation to senior management and government. We do prepare speeches, correspondence, and also cabinet papers for ministers, and we write and present reports. So we have big jobs. We have many activities in our daily life. And as policy analysts, we must specialize in particular field with in defense, labor, finance, energy, environment, health services, transportation, education, and so on and so on. We still have many other kind of specialization. And policy analysts can work in various types of organizations. You can work in government agencies, lobbying agencies, businesses, consulting firms, and then special interest groups, nonprofit, and think tanks. So this is the place where we can work as a policy analyst. Once again, that policy analysts are really needed. However, we have to prove our abilities well. Therefore, we have to increase various knowledge. We have to increase ability to conduct research as a basis for making evidence-based policies, ability to use new research methods, and can also learn ability to understand public policy process, ability to make policy briefs as a means of policy formulation, policy communication, and ability to verbally communicate policy briefs or other policies, ability to lobby to ensure policy proposal to policymakers, and also strengthening certain field as your area of specialization. We at the Indonesian Association for Public Administration have carried out a lot of activities to strengthen members related to policy analysis skills. As an association, I can see that the need for various training is needed. Some that have been done are first is writing policy briefs, and then cost benefit analysis, cost effectiveness analysis, big data analytics using Tableau, orange data mining, SPSS, journal article writing, and so on. So this kind of new thing that we have to understand, big data analytics, is part of new thing that we have to learn. And with the development of information technology, we are experiencing extraordinary leaps in various fields. Social media is a form of media for social interactions and policy interactions. Policy analysts must certainly understand that issues and social relations change. Research methods to capture problems must change. Public interaction with the government or policy makers have shifted, and then conventional public participation is abandoned. Public demand dynamics are very fast. The government response must not be slow, and knowing the public aspiration must be in a new way. Of course, it is not easy being a policy analyst. The first challenge is whether we are able to become a policy analyst who has a set of necessary tools. Second, are we able to convince policymakers who often don't really believe in our abilities? How can we convince them that our idea is very important, something that offers a solution to a problem? The biggest challenge we are facing for our policy analysis, the bureaucratic culture. Policy analysis will be used if the relationship between leaders and subordinates is egalitarian. Leaders want to accept suggestions from subordinates. Leaders are willing to be invited to debate and willing to accept differences of opinion from subordinates, and so on and so on. Unfortunately, there are still many organizational leaders who are very authoritarian. They feel that they know everything, and they are difficult to give input to. For example, when someone expresses a different opinion, it is even considered against the boss. And we can see many jokes because, for example, because of fear of his boss, before going to face his boss, one has to see the weather forecast. In Indonesia, we can say that mau ketemu bos harus lihat ramalan cuaca atau tanya BMKG. If the weather is clear, please meet the boss. If the weather is cloudy, avoid the boss, because if you are reckless, you will be completely scalded. So this is the situation we are facing in some bureaucracies that, of course, become a problem for policy analysts to give opinion, to give suggestion, to give input, and so on and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenges for policy analysis is very tough. How many do we need? Policy analysts for Indonesia, which consists of 34 ministers, 38 provinces, and 514 regencies and cities. What policy analysts specialties are needed in Indonesia, which has various potential problems and, of course, dreams. In order to become a policy analyst with particular specialization, one must have in-depth understanding of aspects of policy issues, understanding policy practices that have been offered, and of course, master policy practices in other countries. For example, talking about policy analysts in the health sector, we must understand what are the problems in the health sector, what are the policy framework in the several other countries, and so on and so on. So we have a lot of, we have to know many things about the practice of policy in other countries. We have to know the data, policy, the framework, and so on. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, with the new condition, we have to learn many things. In terms of tools for research analysis, for example, now we have to know how to use Google Form, how to use SurveyMonkey, how to use Tableau for social analysis, Orange data mining, big data analytics, and so on and so on. Dear participants, those are the ideas for our discussion. Hopefully my presentation is useful, and I thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof. Agus. Let's give a round of applause to Prof. Agus, our first panelist. Yes, and now we move on to our second speaker. I think Prof. Alex is not yet joined yet. So we have to go to our third speaker, which is Miss Adriana Plasencia Diaz. She is from the Instituto Nacional de Administración Pública. I don't know if I said that correct. Yeah, because I have a niece and she's married to Hispanic and they live in LA now. So he's my Spanish practice. Okay, Miss Adriana is our next speaker, and your time is around 20 minutes, like Prof. Agus. So please go around 20 minutes, and the floor or the screen is yours, please.
Well, thank you very much to the Tenauto Foundation and for all the organizers for having me here. It's a great pleasure to share the floor with these extraordinary speakers, and I will talk about the role of policy analysts in accelerating the transformation of digital-based bureaucracy, sharing with you some of the experiences in Mexico. In Mexico, we are, just like Indonesia, a very wide and large country with more than 124 million people. So when we talk about bureaucracy, sometimes we think that it's a bad word. And it's a bad word because bureaucratic systems are very much like as an illness for the people who try to interact with their with our government in the different levels of the governments that we have. We are organized as federal republic, and we have 3 different levels of government. The first one is the federal government, and the second one is the state level, and there's a third one that it's the municipal level. And the capacities, the administrative capacities are quite different from one municipality to another, or from one state to another. And the federal government, it's integrated by 18 secretariats or ministries, and they are very different between each other because of their also administrative capacities, and also because of the budget that each of one ministries have. And well, I will try to recall what the chairman talked about in their opening statement about the context. I think that Indonesia, Mexico, and most of the countries in our planet are living in a context of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. This VUCA context that make us, the civil servants, to work in a very complex context. Complexity is a core feature of most policy issues today, and their components are interrelated in multiple hard to define ways. But I think that we can agree that governments are very ill equipped to deal with complex problems. And I think that maybe this digital transformation will help us to understand what bureaucracy will be transforming in the next years and in the last years also towards a digital transformation. In a nutshell, the question that I try to address with this presentation is what is the role of policy analysts towards this transformation to a digital bureaucracy or a digital-based bureaucracy. And I think that in Mexico's case, we have this this interaction between the bureaucratic system, a very traditional one, and the post-bureaucratic system that needs to transform and needs to address complex context, and to understand that traditional approaches to public sector reforms have not delivered the results that everyone expected, reflecting poor design and weak stakeholders' participation. Also, there's a very sectorial rather than a whole of government initiative and inadequate evaluation of this transformation or this digital reform in Mexico. So sometimes we think that bureaucratic systems have not the best organization or the best processes to address this kind of reform. And we also forget that when we are trying to create an organization, we tend to forget that this organization will grow and evolve. And when this organization grow and evolve, we have to rely on what the main characteristics of bureaucratic systems are. And those are the role and the rules. And we have very rigid roles and very rigid rules. But I think this, instead of being an obstacle for a reform towards digital transformation, the people who are involved in technological information systems, they know that they will need roles, rigid roles and rigid rules to define and design very solid technological information systems. And I think that this simply a statement of formal rigid rules and formal rigid rules will tend to design this bureaucratic efficiency. I will try to explain myself, because efficiency is not a single characteristic. but a complex set of attributes. And in this case, we have to understand government as a very unique part of the society. And we tend to forget that governments are not isolated from society, and we have to recall and to ask for the participation of different stakeholders, of nonprofit organizations, but also academia and people who are interested in innovation systems. I think that the digital transformation of bureaucracy crosses through system thinking, design thinking, and of course critical thinking to redesign what we have in our processes and in our rules and in our roles in the Mexican bureaucracy. Digitalization, it's a main factor, but it's not the main objective. Also, decentralization is not the main objective, but it's a very important factor to build a different structure, a bureaucratic system in Mexico. As you may know, the OECD has defined wicked problems, this kind of problems that the contemporary governments are dealing with. These wicked problems are changing all the time. When we try to address them, when we try to solve any kind of public problems, they tend to change, and there is an impossibility of having a complete diagnosis or understanding. And we also do not have the optimum solutions. And there's this unpredictable and uncertainty context that make us more difficult to address these wicked problems. And there's this concept of liminality that talks about these regular routines that are suspended. And we can think about this wicked problem like in during the pandemic episode in the whole world, when most of the governments have not the the answers and the strategies, the best strategies to address this pandemic situation. And of course, I think that the role of policy analysts is centered in trying to address wicked problems by innovation. Innovation is very linked to digitalization, to the generation of value, and also to address potential challenges. Digitalization is also the possibility of creating jobs, of creating opportunities in the public sector, in the society, and transforming education, but also transforming the way that governments address public services to the people. And there's this huge gap in Mexico that we have to fill with a budget that allows us to invest in the sciences, technology, and engineering and math, so we can have the people who are will become in a few generations the people that will design the transformation of the bureaucracy, of the Mexican bureaucracy, towards a digitalization of the main processes, rules in our government, in our 3 different levels of our governments here in Mexico. Thank you so much for your attention, and that will be my presentation.
Yes, Miss Adriana, muchas gracias. Yes, for our second panelist. And it is very enlightening and very shed light on the issues, especially on the challenge of VUCA, and also how Mexico is also similar to Indonesia, which we have a large population, and also we still have a lot of high poverty and a large land, and also the three level of governments with the federal, state, and municipal. In Indonesia also, I think it's particularly the same. We have we call the state also federal, and then we have a province or the province, and then kabupaten, which is like municipality, similar also, which we have different views. So I think permission, Pak Yogi, since Pak Alex Brillantes has not joined us, I think it's time for us to continue to the Q&A, or questions and answers.
Alex
So,
already joined.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Check. Thank you, Prof. Agus. Prof. Alex,
Yeah.
check sound. Prof. Alex.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I was here, but
Oh, sorry.
please unmute me. Terima kasih banyak. I guess some technical issues.
Excuse me, Prof. Alex. It's muted. It's muted. It's muted.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Very
Okay,
clear. Mabuhay.
Okay. Terima kasih banyak. I was here earlier and I was talking to my good friend, Dr. Agus. And of course, I listened to the presentation of Dr. Adriana. Very interesting when she's talking about the VUCA world and all that, no? So it's very, very important. But my topic today, I'll focus on digitalization and zeroing on human resource, on the civil service. I know that Pak Agus is the chairman of the civil service. Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, wow.
Loud and clear.
Okay, because that's digitalization for you. You cannot hear me. Sometimes I can hear you. Okay. Can you hear me, my friend?
Yes, we can all hear you. We can all hear you.
Because Dr. Agus is not moving, so I just wonder if he's frozen. Okay. So let me start with the. I will start now with my screen share. Okay.
Okay. It's about around 20 minutes, Prof.
Yeah,
Alex.
yeah. I promise. It will not go beyond 20 minutes. I promise. I'll stick to my in Filipino and Indonesian time, 20 minutes. Okay. So can you see me now? Okay. Terima kasih banyak. Yeah. This is I promise 20 minutes. And thank you, Dr. Adriana, for that presentation. And of course, my good friend Mozani. Good to see you again. So I'll talk about it within the context of what Dr. Adriana mentioned earlier about VUCA. No, okay. But what my main message here? My main message is we are talking about the role of policy analysts in digital transformation. There are a lot of challenges, and most important, my friends, most important, the digital divide is will be the most challenging phase of inequity today. You and I know that we have the digital divide, and the countries today are, we're trying to build the digital divide. But guess what? As we are bridging the digital divide, it's becoming wider and wider and wider. In the United Nations, in UNDP, we talk about no one is going to be left behind. But guess what? As countries are advancing, other countries are being left behind. And even in my own country, as Manila, the center is advancing, the periphery is being left behind. Point, dear friends, a major problem that we as policy analysts should address that portion within the context of the digital divide. After having said that, I'll take off from what Dr. Adjadi mentioned, the VUCA world, the digital era. This will, I promise it will not be more than 20 minutes. So as I said earlier, my main message really is we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, the importance of us in land. I know Indonesia very well. I love Indonesia. Aku cinta padamu. I've been to Indonesia many, many times. And I love Indonesia. Dr. Agus, Dr. Eko, they're some of my best friends. We just met yesterday. But you know what? Sometimes all of us are part of this quote-unquote global network of public administration, LAN. I'm from the National College of Public Administration in the University of the Philippines. and the same problems we're talking about. Of course, it's so nice to see a friend from Mexico, because the Philippines has been influenced so much by Mexico. Our constitution and many, our language, my family name. If you look at it, it's Brillantes. It is Mexican, but we have a lot of commonalities. Indonesia, Mexico, part of the third world, the digital divide. Are you kidding? We are all in one sense. People talk about the third world, but of course, Indonesia is now BRICS. Brazil, India, China, BRICS, and Indonesia. You are now becoming one of the world's best power. That's what everybody says. Okay, but anyway, we are part of UNDESA. Dr. Agus and I, we participate in UNDESA. But they talk about he's also here, Adriana Alberti, the same name as Adriana. She talks about the digital divide and how it impacts on us as career civil servants. Dr. Agus, you're the chairman of the civil service, and you know that it impacts us in the civil service, okay? And how to change, no? But we need to be agile. We are in the bureaucracy. We need to be agile. Otherwise, if we're stuck in the mud, we will be left behind. Sometimes, dear friends, the bureaucracy is the enemy. Why? Because bureaucracy is stability, continuity. But sometimes we in the bureaucracy do not change our mindset. Okay, that's very important. I'll talk about this, but this is a framework of policy analysis that we have used. No, at the end of the day, for what? I know in Indonesia you have the Pancasila. We talk about what are the values, but everything should be aligned to these values. In the Philippines, we have what we call Ambition Natin 2040, but all of this should be aligned to something higher, which is, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals. Question, what we are doing aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals? And if you look at this, number 10 talks about reduced inequalities, you know, that's very, very important. And of course, number 16, all of us in land and public administration are for strong institutions. Point difference, we are in this together, no? But this should stem from common values, right? And this is where our topic for today, we as policy analysts should come in. Question, we have many programs, we have many projects, but many times we see that our programs and projects are sometimes isolated, are sometimes fragmented, are sometimes not aligned, and sometimes irrelevant. Let's face it, many times the problem in governance are us in the bureaucracy. I mentioned that, dear friends, because I myself was a deputy minister for 4 years, and I was an assistant minister for about 6 years, so I worked full-time in government. And sometimes I realized that sometimes, you know what, the problem is us. The problem is the way we in the government think. But not everybody, of course. You have innovators, you have people who are more agile. But sometimes if you're in the bureaucracy, you're a policy analyst, you just want to be stable, you just want to be remain there, and we are not agile. Okay. So it should be aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is another policy analytical framework. And let me say now that at the end of the day, the policies and institutions, the civil service, has to go in line with our organizations, and let's say land, and then we as individuals to provide, to address the so-called knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Well, you know this, all of you around the room are experts in this, but at the end of the day, knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And of course, this was also discussed by Dr. Adriana earlier about we in the public sector, but we in the public sector must not be by ourselves. We should work with civil society, we should work with the private sector. That is what governance is all about. Because as I've said many times before, I think is you cannot rely on government for governance alone. You cannot rely on government for governance alone. Because sometimes, dear friends, the problem is government itself. Sometimes the problem is government itself. Okay, so this is I think Adriana mentioned this about the input output feedback, no, the good old classic systems analysis. And sometimes what I say here is what you put in, you put out. You and I have heard about GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So hey, we have to make sure that the appropriate things that we put in are indeed appropriate. Appropriate for whom? Okay. So what's the impact on the public sector? I've already mentioned that public sector should be agile, okay, should be thinking, no? And we in the public sector should realize that sometimes we can be the problem. Why? Because we want to be stable. We want to be neutral. But sometimes there's no room for neutrality in, at least for me, there's no room for neutrality because we should have our own biases. This is what I mentioned, the same name as you, Adriana, a good friend of mine from the United Nations. She talks about the mindset. I don't know if you know her, but she talks about sometimes this is it. The public servant's mindset, values, and attitudes is the problem. What we see is the tip of the iceberg, but sometimes what we do not see is what is under the iceberg. Resistance, resistance to change, resistance to innovation. And that is very, very important for us in the public sector. That's why, as I mentioned earlier, well, you have a lot of digital governance today, a lot of digital tools, and many times we in the public sector are ourselves do not agree with this. So this is the paradigm that we're using in the United Nations. Okay. So I will not go over that, but all I'm saying is that when we want to bring, so you have that, but we want to bring about reform. And when you bring about reform, we want to bring about change structures, but the values, I mentioned that, but leadership is important, but citizen engagement towards our vision, which is the sustainable development goals for 2030. And dear friends, I don't think we will meet that sustainable development goals because we have had indeed the problem of the pandemic, as you know. Okay, so this is I'll just hurry because I don't have just 10 more minutes. So the digital, the fourth industrial revolution. I'm sure you're familiar with this. No, the fourth industrial revolution, the steam engine, electronic. You've seen this, the computer, artificial intelligence, and this is really what's scary today about sometimes how artificial intelligence becomes it decides for us. But I must say that sometimes we should not rely on it because you know what? There are certain things that can be digitalized. There are certain things that artificial intelligence can do, but there are certain things it cannot do. It does not have values. And sometimes if we rely on this, for this, it will not work. Because at the end of the day, human beings cannot be replaced by artificial intelligence, by robots. That's just my own take. So if you look at this, a good friend of Agus and I, his name is Pan Soo Kim, has showed us this. Sometimes we have so many robots, and of course, as we are around the room, you have the mobile computer, cloud computing, 3-block, big data, etc., etc. But sometimes you have a big government. This is what Dr. An in Korea mentioned. Sometimes it's a Dumbo government. Dumbo. When you talk about Dumbo, sometimes the government is so big it cannot move. Why? Because you can have nice digital, etc. But sometimes we in the bureaucracy do not change. And that is the role of policy analysts. Question, are we as policy analysts agile enough to open all this? Okay. And that's why HRD. So when we talk about the importance of e-governance, utilizing the internet, we have e-administration, e-citizens. I'm sure you have heard about one-stop shop, in the Philippines today. I'll talk about that momentarily, about how sometimes we tell them that people should not go to government, but all they do is to use their telephone and everything's already in their app, yeah, which I think is great. But sometimes and that is great because it hastens the delivery services, but sometimes that also eliminates, quote unquote, the human aspect, which is also one particular advantage of digital governance, elimination of corruption. Elimination of corruption. All of us are familiar with KKN, corruption, collusion, nepotism. Also in the Philippines, we have problems of corruption. But if there's no negotiation between the people in government and the client, then there's no corruption. So it is important. Okay. So these are just examples of digital government around the world. China has the online project. New Zealand, one advanced the country in terms of e-governance, one-stop shop portal. Very quickly, then this is in New Zealand. They have a portal where you go there and everything can be done digitally, which I think is good. Agile, which I think is good. It's fast. Australia, one of the top 3 countries in digital governance, and of course, I'll mention Indonesia. You have a handbook on e-government. I really admire Indonesia. You have a handbook on the use of the internet, and of course, your great president, President Widodo himself, an advocate of digital governance. Okay, in the United Kingdom, top performing countries in e-governance, and of course, they have this website. All of us have our website, but sometimes when you open the website, Brunei also. Okay, and of course, they have their own website. I guess what I'm telling dear friends, and I'll be done in 5 minutes. What I'm telling dear friends is it has been part of this whole revolution. Question, have we as policy analysts recognized this revolution? Or are we as policy analysts, have we been left behind? And that is very, very important. The next slides will just show about how we in the Philippines have done it. I'll not spend much time on this, but we started in 1991 and today we have a government plan. And I must say, especially since my field is local government, Dr. Agus and I've known him for the past 10 years, my friend. So we have done a lot of local governance. And at the end of the day, local governments are the front lines. And they themselves should be part of this whole digital governance revolution. Naga City, how people pay taxes, This is how they pay amusement, the payment portal. Okay. Then of course Valenzuela, one of our best cities in the Philippines. They call it the 3S, Simple Speed Service, and they receive an award. In the Philippines, we have an award for local governance. And Valenzuela City, one day, I hope I'll have a chance to bring all of you here. And of course, this online. So I guess, my friends, what I'm saying is you can go online and pay it, which is good. But question, are we in the government ready to do this? So I guess one very, very important part is the importance of capacity building. In Cagayan de Oro, okay, what are the impacts? Just 5 more minutes, I'm done. The impacts of digital, of course, we talk about the importance of artificial intelligence and the impacts of the digital divide. That is really my main point here, because all of us around the room are familiar with this, but we have to be careful about the digital divide. Otherwise, it will continue to widen, and people will be left behind. And the goal of the United Nations, we of us, is no one is left behind. But guess what? Those who have not access to the internet, those who don't have access to this, will be the ones left behind. And the importance of job destruction, some jobs might be lost, automation, job creation. So it has a lot of impact. So I guess another key point here is the importance of land, the importance of capacity building institutions to really help us cope with this digital divide. And that is the role of the policy analyst. What should we do? What kind of training and what sections are appropriate? The challenge is that many times in government think that we know what is best for all, right? But we should listen to them, and we as a policy analysis is a tool that would help us in the process. I will end with this. So it's very, very important. We are all in public administration. We are all in policy analysis. Yes, digitalization is good for efficiency, economy, effectiveness. Things are faster. Things are cheaper. Things are more effective. But guys, we should remember, let's not forget the whole good old-fashioned equity and ethics and accountability. Equity and accountability, and as I said, the digital divide is the new face of inequity. So when we in policy analysis, we should not forget for whom. Are we there for the big people like this guy, or are we there for the small people? We are in public administration, so we should have focus on the poorer people, those who have been left behind, build bridges, because if we continue just focusing on the big people, public administration becomes irrelevant and sometimes the enemy of the people. And you all know that even Greta Thunberg, I love this. I love her. She's 17 years old and was really challenging us in public administration, challenging us in policy analysis, that things cannot be the same as we were before. Why? Because as people are getting richer, people are dying. And that's part of the VUCA world that Dr. Adriana also just mentioned now. So I cite this and I'll end now. This is in the Philippines. Look at on the left side, the digital divide. On the left side in Manila, people with so many computers, one computer. But in the provinces, people are on top of the roof looking for signal. Why? Because the digital divide. And I think even as policy analysts, we should learn that, hey, the digitalization is good. It is good for efficiency, economy, effectiveness. It is good, of course. It is just a tool. But let's not forget, people will be left behind. And that is the new phase of inequity. I'll end with this. So capacity building is important. We in LAN, you in a public administration institution, the importance to continue to build capacity. So I'm very grateful to be part of this webinar, end of the year webinar. Then our role as academic institutions continue questioning. And our role, what we talk about universities, UI, Gadjah Mada University, town and gown, the university should be relevant to the town. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. So that's what this guy named Aristotle mentioned, that, hey, we continue to look at the theory, but let's not forget practice. This is Plato pointing upwards. Look at the theory, how to lead people, and the practice, digitalization. But you need to balance that. That is what praxis is all about. That's phronetic is all about. So I should shut up now. I just made 20 minutes. Terima kasih banyak. And if there are any questions, I'm very grateful of Professor Agus and my good friend Muzani for this opportunity. And I hope to meet you again someday. Terima kasih banyak.
Salamat, Pak Alex, Prof. Alex Variantes. Okay, we have. Yeah, you're just in time for 20 minutes, Prof. So I think without further ado, before we open our question and answers or Q&A, let me remind that please fill out the application form in the chat box and also the link of the satisfaction survey. This is part of digital. So I think to all, I see 701 participants here. in the Zoom. Wow, that's a large number, and you can see the eagerness of this International Virtual Public Lecture or webinar. And also, this is also, I would like to inform, this is streamed live through YouTube. So people can also record it. So I think this is a very fruitful and insightful webinar where we had 3 wonderful and inspiring speakers. First of all, Prof. Agus, second, Ms. Adriana, third, Prof. Alex. I think, yes, on the last point, I think about Plato and Aristotle tell us, yes, nice to think about theory and practice. But I think it's time to give time to the floor in the audience, I think, to give question and answers. And I would invite, please, I've seen like 6 from the Slido, so they're written, and after the written questions, we can go with the open to the and raise hands. Okay. First of all, it's from my colleague, Haris Fauzan. Thank you. The question is to Prof. Adriana Diaz. Yeah, Miss, based on your research, what difficulties do policy analysts in Mexico encounter in their role? What are the solutions to solve these conditions? Thanks a lot. Okay, first question. Okay, please, Ms. Adriana.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Haris Fauzan. And let me first thank to Professor Brillantes and Professor Angus for their very interesting presentation. And as Professor Brillantes said, I think that we share the same problems and we share the same conditions to address those problems. In Mexico, I think that one of the main difficulties to improve the digitalization strategies is budget. We have a very wide known problem because there's not enough money to address all the public sector problems, and digitalization needs money to implement the strategy and to transform the bureaucratic processes. But also, I think that there is a huge difference between Indonesia and Mexico. You do have a civil service, a very solid and important civil service, and we do not have that in Mexico. There had been attempts to build a civil service, a Mexican civil service for the bureaucratic civil servants, but we are still struggling with the processes to integrate the best women and men to the public sector. And I think that in order to recall what Professor Brillantes said, that digitalization seems to be the next inequality and inequity condition for our societies. I will have to say that I find that digitalization maybe will come us or will take us together in this way. This is what I'm trying to say. Digitalization will provide most of all of us with capacities, with different capacity building, and I think that the government, the Mexican government, needs to invest in those capacities in the very young students, but also in the public civil servants. And also, I think that digitalization will come us or will bring us together, because the pandemic shows us that we have to connect to each other, and maybe it's also a matter of money. I mean, Mexico has a huge gap between the society with a very wide population living in poverty and a very small population living with better conditions. And I think that how can we bring these two opposite poles of the society, of the Mexican society? I think that if the Mexican government invests in digitalization, in capacity building, maybe we can come all together and connect with each other in very different ways. During the pandemic, in the education system, in the Mexican education system, there were a lot of challenges to face, but I think that maybe the pandemic pushed the teachers and the students to involve in digitalization, to learn about these kind of platforms like Zoom, like Teams, and also they try to connect not with a whole computer, but with their phones and with different devices that solve their interconnection problems. That could be my answer.
Yes, Miss Adriana, I think that's very direct questions to Haris Fauzan, yeah, about the experience of pandemic and pushing it for everybody, even the government and the people, the students and negotiation. I think for the second question, Mas Pamuji, I think this for other panelists, or yeah, this comes from Miss Mia Zuhara. She works from the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the question is to all speakers. So I think Prof. Agus and then Miss Adrian, maybe Prof. Alex, yeah, second, and then Miss Adriana third, okay? Because there was a question from you in the beginning. The question is to all speakers. May I ask about how policy analysts can be able to change the mindset for Indonesians to keep positive thoughts about bureaucracy, especially at digital base? Thank you. Prof. Agus, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I think today I learned a lot from the two other speakers, and also thank you very much for the challenging question. I'll be back to the first question. I think we have a similar problem. We face we are facing digital infrastructure which is not evenly distributed between regions. Just look at the differences between Java and outside Java, or Jakarta compared to other small islands. And we have also a problem with our digital skills. The digital skills are different. There are still many employees who have never touched a computer, and on the other hand, there are many employees who have advanced in technology. We can compare between the older generation versus the younger generation, or people from the city compared to the people from the rural area. So we can see that the problem is very serious. Okay, back to the question from Mia Zuhara from the Ministry of Home Affairs. I just want to say that if we are talking about technology is just a tool. The first thing we have to change is how to change our mindset. How to change that. Digitalization is a process of making the service faster. But if our mindset is still like traditional mindset, we don't care about how to serve people well. So do we already change our technology, we improve the quality of information technology, then technology is nothing. What we need is we have to change our mindset. And we cannot rely on other people to change first. So first, just change your mindset first. So we start from ourselves. We cannot waiting for other people to start. We have to change from ourselves. So change your mindset first. Hopefully, other people will follow you. But if you are just waiting for other people, so there will be any changes. So it's very simple. Just start from yourself. Start from the small thing. Again, that technology is just a tool. What we need is how to change our mindset. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Agus, how the mindset is more important rather than just the digital technology. And then our next, I think, Prof. Alex, you should address the questions.
Terima kasih. I'm glad Dr. Agus mentioned that. And if you note in my presentation, I did say the importance of changing the mindset, because sometimes the enemy is ourselves. But after having said that, I think a fundamental question is really for whom? We are all policy analysts. We are all in government. And sometimes for whom? I think we should ask a question, for whom is public administration? For whom is the policy analyst? And as I've said earlier, yes, we are there to improve economy, efficiency, effectiveness. That's fine. We're all good managers. But for whom? We're talking about those who have been left behind. And most important difference, we're talking about the next generation. And how do we use this? And Dr. Agus mentioned about the digital divide. Geographically, the Philippines has 7,000 islands, the same. Sometimes it's in Metro Manila. We call it Imperial Manila. I don't know if you in Jakarta call it Imperial Jakarta. I don't know. But, sometimes everything is in the capital, okay? How about those in the province? So we're talking about the geographical divide, but equally important, and Dr. Agus mentioned this, because we in the bureaucracy, we're also talking about the between the old and the younger ones. The younger ones and the older. People who have been working in government sometimes have a hard time adjusting to this, myself included. I kept on telling Agus, please send me the link, and said, just click it, that kind of thing. But the younger ones, the digital natives, are you kidding? They just do just like that, just like my children, okay? So how do we older ones change the mindset so that, hey, let's embrace it. Let's embrace it. Let's not be afraid. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's embrace it. And I think that's very, very important as far as this is concerned. Yeah. So, terima kasih banyak, but really change the mindset as you mentioned. But for me, go back to the fundamental question, for whom? Why are we policy analysts? Is it for government or for whom? It's for the poor, it's for those who have been left behind, but most importantly, it's for the next generation. And that's why we should use digitalization for whom. Terima kasih banyak.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Alex. And then Ms. Adriana.
Thank you, Professor Mansour. I think Mia Zuhara has a very good question, because the mindset of the person is the main key to our change. And I think it's the most difficult factor to transform individually, but also when we're talking about an organization. And when I was listening to my fellow speakers, I was trying to recall all the literature, the classical literature that talks about the bureaucratic systems. And I was recalling and remembering Kafka's novels, The Castle, and also the Jose Saramago, All Names novel and stories that talks about the mindset of the bureaucrats. These people that are not engaged with their society, that they only follow the rules, and they only follow the rules. but I have to take the words of Professor Brillantes. The bureaucrats are working for the people. The bureaucrats are working for the society. So I think that the best way to change the mindset of bureaucratic organizations and bureaucrats is to link them to the creation of value for their societies, for their communities. If they do their work right, they will transform their proximities and also their communities and also their nations. But it's a matter of leadership and also of innovation. And I have to take also Adler's list of the conditions that Paul Adler's list about the conditions necessary to improve the behavior and to change the mindset of bureaucrats. He underlines that it's very important to establish work groups, to establish a leadership, and to establish a very secure environment for innovation, to trying to transform the processes in the bureaucratic work, but also to innovate in the way that bureaucrats interact with their communities. I think it's the main challenge for any government is to change the mindset of the people who's working in the government.
Can I add something?
Yes,
Mas?
please. Yes, please. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you,
I
Mr.
just
Joni.
want to give a very simple example. We use cell phone, but when messages are sent and we are very slow to respond, what is the point? The use of technology. I use my cell phone to serve by receiving complaints from civil servants throughout Indonesia until midnight. But there are many people who open messages after 3 days. So it's not about technology, but about mindsets to serve faster. Everybody use telephone, but the way you use, how to use it is different from one person to another. Thank you.
Thank you. That also, Prof. Brillantes, you also added some in the chat box. I noticed, and then I think it's we should open the questions without the Slido. I think we should welcome Pak Yogi Suwarno. Yeah, I think he's my colleague from LAN, which made this webinar possible. So he is on behalf of Pak Yogi Suwarno, and also the time or the question is yours, please, and please address it.
Thank you, Pak Mujani, Prof. Agus, Prof. Alex, good to see you again, and Adriana as well. It is always nice to, listen to the three of you, talking in, seminar like this, and it is interesting to see that actually the three countries share many things in common, actually. So, well, like Prof. Agus emphasized the needs to be more focused on specialization, or I think Adriana emphasized the strong word that bureaucracy sometimes or mostly, considered as bad words. And also, I always came across the, PPT, like the one presented by Prof. Alex, the equity versus equality, that picture. Although I don't agree completely, Professor, because watching football from outside stadium would be illegal. Anyway, let me go back to the topic that when we talk about policy analysts, that they are supposed to produce like policy recommendation for decision makers. But I'm still wondering, probably from your experience in Mexico, in the Philippines, and of course in Indonesia as well, do decision makers really listen to policy analysts? Because sometimes, or probably most of the times, the decision makers will favor or will listen to politicians rather than policy analysts. This is something really intriguing. Like we have this profession of policy analysts that's supposed to support and create a good policy, but at the same time, the real life, the real how bureaucracy works, and politicians as well. So it is barely, you cannot find a good policy without any influence from the politician as well. So I wonder if such competition between policy analysts and politician in your country, how do we deal with this? Maybe that's just the question. Thank you.
Okay, directly I think it's addressed to the three panels, right, Yogi? So, and about the politicians and also the policy analysis. Are they against, or are they working together? Who would like to come first?
I can.
Okay, Prof. Brillantes.
Well, I'm sorry. It's good to see you, Pak Yogi, again. Really, I really admire your institution. But you are so right. I mean, I'm sure all of you have heard the so-called politics administration dichotomy, right? Politics administration dichotomy. And there is a dichotomy, yes, but it's only in theory. Because at the end of the day, it can lead to frustration on the part of the policy analyst. We can have the best kinds of policies, but if the politicians don't agree, they can shunt it aside. I say that from experience. Like I said, I was in government myself, and I work with a minister, and sometimes a politician. We go before our ministers, we go before our parliament. We have very nice policies, but if it doesn't agree with them, then sometimes they shunt it aside. But our best tool is evidence. Our best tool is evidence. That's why policy analysis is all about evidence-based policy making. Evidence-based. We show them the figures. We show them, our computations, evidence, and then we show to them. And if they don't agree, that's their problem. But in my own experience, some politicians want to quote unquote show that they're also very bright. They want to show, hey, we're also evidence-based, and they use our evidence. They say, according to this think tank in LAN, this is what they said. And they use that. So that's our best tool, evidence. That's why policy analysis is all about analysis, really. It's about evidence-based. But at the end of the day, we want us to be quite pragmatic, because not all politicians are the same. But I must say, we do have a lot of politicians who are really looking for evidence-based policies, because for decision-making. Thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak.
Prof. Agus?
Maybe Adriana first.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
I think that this tense confrontation between politicians and policy analysts is very well known in most of our countries. But the key factor is what Professor Brillantes just told us. The public policies have to be based on evidence. And when you have evidence, data, and you transform bureaucracies and metrics, so you can design public policies, you can implement public policies and evaluate them. But if you don't have the evidence to show if they are working or not with data, the tense between politicians and policy analysts grows to the point that the stress will broke the link between the policy analysts and the politicians. But I think it's the way that governments are organized in the whole planet. And of course, the politicians have the power to fire policy analysts, even if they have the evidence, the information, the data that show them that they are implementing the wrong public policy. But I think that with the numbers, with the metrics, with the data, with the information, politicians should come to their senses. I know this is hard to think, because politicians are politicians and they are driven by different objectives, objectives of their groups and objectives of their individual interests. So it's hard to think that politicians will move forward or will change their way of thinking or the way of doing things by evidence. But I think that information is a very strong weapon to transform this relationship between policy analysts and politicians.
Okay. Yes. As mentioned by Adriana, yeah, politician is a politician. They don't care about the interests of the nation. They just care about themselves. Just make sure that our recommendation is just to protect them. If they are feel to be protected, then yeah, they listen to us. Perhaps it is we who are unable to convince politicians that if our recommendations are not implemented, then the world will end. Maybe our experience dealing with COVID-19, then politicians feel the need to listen to the result of research or policy analysts. When they feel that the conditions are critical, then yeah, they will listen to our analysis, our research. But if it's not critical, they can live, they can enjoy the life. So yeah, they don't care about our position. They don't care about our input, suggestion, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the three panelists. There's a comment in the chat, I think, that Professor Brillantes answered also. I should read that. Maybe it's related. As a policy analyst, we should always go back to the fundamental question: for whom is policy analysis? For whom is public administration? Yet it is for efficiency, economy, and effectiveness. But more important, we should remember equity, those left behind, and for the next generation, and all within the context of ethics and accountability. I'm just reading what Prof. Brillantes answered in the chat, because I think we should put that, it's related also with the question. Okay, the next person to raise hand, I think, Muhammad Luqman. Muhammad Luqman, you raise your hand, please. I see.
Yes, hello.
Yes, yes. Can you state your name and your institution, and maybe open your camera, please?
All right. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Muhammad Luqman Tamrin, and I'm from Ministry of Village Development of Disadvantaged Region and Transmigration. Okay. Sorry, I'm in the hospital right now, taking my children to for doctor consultation. Well, but this is Zoom meeting is, I think, very important one, and I'm very happy to be able to attend this Zoom. So, well, talking about policy analysts in the this digital era, I think it's very interesting. But I want to maybe ask for some kind of insights from the speakers about the resources I think in this era, in this digital world, I think today that we have so many benefits regarding data and also analysis. For example, we have a global institutions such as UN, APO is in Productivity Organization, or ASEAN Secretariat, which annually, routinely, they produced reports, annual reports that include recommendations. So, but I think what you call the miss one is that sometimes we are in the government sectors didn't put high awareness towards that kind of resources, that external resources that that the other institution, a credible institution, has been released or something like that. Because I think the aim of policy analysts how to create a high level policy analyst, not just only on the paper, but good to be implemented and to reach our objective as a, for example, a civil servant in the ministerial level. But so I think there's sort of a gap, between that institution that come up with their annual report with data and with in-depth analysis, but we are in the government sector. Sometimes our data and our analysis didn't have any, I don't know, a correlation or sometimes connectivity with those that being released by that international institution. For example, I just give you a case about one sectors that about plastic waste. The UN, the United Nations, has released that every year human produce about 300 million tons of plastic waste, and including 11 million tons that eventually wind up in the oceans. So in fact, by 2050, there could be more plastic than fish in the oceans. So how can we in the government sector have to respond to this facts? If we don't put some kind of a good policy towards this issue or this matter, there could be, like the UN said, there could be more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050. So, so my question is to the speaker, how we can actually elaborate or collaborate with other institutions, because actually with this limited resources because of the pandemic, I think I just find out that the fact that actually there's a lot of good benefit resources that we can put together if we can collaborate and we can cooperate together in effective ways, in a more engaging ways with other sectors, other stakeholders. So in order to create a very good policy analyst. So once again, what are the, I'd like to know your thoughts about this gap. I think there's a sort of gap with this, how the government policy have to handle the global issues, which basically that issues is very much related till the lowest part of the government sector, for example, in the villages, for the villages or for the village area. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Muhammad Lukman Tamrin from the Ministry of Village and Transmigration. I understand he's in the hospital taking his children, but he raised points, I think, about how to elaborate and collaborate and connection and connectivity in between the government sectors and also international organizations. I think as an example, he put how plastic in the future can be more fish. So I don't know, yeah, but maybe not just that issue. Maybe other issues can be raised. I think from the experience, who will be first? Oh, Miss Adriana, please.
Thank
Ladies,
you.
ladies.
Ladies first, right? Thank you so much. I think that in Mexico, there's a national digital strategy for the government. We have this e-government program, and it consists or it is based in 12 principles. One of those principles is to encourage engagement and participation of public and private sector, also with civil society stakeholders in policymaking and public service design and delivery. I think that this principle is very important to address the problems, the public problems, in a way that the different stakeholders have a very specific responsibility. And also one of the principles in the National Digital Mexican Strategy is to ensure greater transparency and also openness and inclusiveness of government processes and operations. I think that during the pandemic, we pointed out that there was this huge gap between the people who didn't have a device to connect with their teachers or with their families. But we also pointed out that most of the people have a cell phone, and they interact through those devices, and it's easier for them to interact with in a different form that we are used to deliver services in person in a presential way. And there's also this third principle in the National Digital Mexican Strategy, and it consists in the creation of a data-driven culture in the public sector that reflects risk management approach to addressing digital security and privacy issues, and include the adoption of effective and appropriate security measures, because the data and the information of the public sector, it's very, very important to preserve the confidence on government services. The information of the people is equal to have a lot of money in our pockets. So we have to protect their data, and we have to protect the information that the people is given to the government. So yes, I will definitely agree with our last intervention that there has to be this engagement between different stakeholders to push and to transform the way that governments address this digital agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Adriana. Prof. Agus atau Prof. Alex, which one first?
Okay. Thank you for the information, comment, and question. Indeed, there are many problems when we are talking about policy. There are problems with data, problem with how to formulate them into policies, problem with limited resources, problem with implementation, and so on and so on. That is the challenge for policy analysts to work with. And we cannot work alone. Collaboration with many people is very important. For example, talking about waste or trash is very complex, involving many people and also institutions. Yeah. with government, private sector, and NGO, and so on. Thank you very much.
Okay. Prof. Brillantes, please.
Terima kasih. Very quick. You know, that example about plastic is very, very important. So that's the evidence. I mean, how to, I guess we use the word conscientize the people, how to make them angry. That when we talk about the next generation, is this the kind of generation? Is this the kind of world we would like to leave our children? Okay. So if you're talking about plastic and fish, okay. So we have the evidence, we have the record, and even at the level of the United Nations. And then we come down. Now, Dr. Agus mentioned, begin with ourselves. Question: how many of us around the room right now? How many of us around the room sort our garbage? How many of us sort? It begins at home. It begins with ourselves, as Dr. Agus mentioned. Okay? But once you have sorted your garbage, it goes down to the, in my country, we call the barangay, the village level. Okay. So when the garbage man comes, do they themselves sort, or do they just put it all together? That's where policy analysis comes. There has to be a science. That's why it's called policy science, right? Okay. So it has to be vertical also. Vertical and horizontal. I'll give you a very quick story. One time we had to, my village, we had to sort our garbage. But guess what? At one time we did not sort our garbage. So the one collecting the garbage from the city hall pressed the doorbell. Excuse me, we will not sort, we will not collect your garbage unless it is sorted. I liked it so much because here was an ordinary garbage man teaching me, teaching us professors, we will not collect it until you change your ways. And I was so happy because even my city mayor lives nearby. So you're talking about a policy that is science-based. You're talking about a policy that is adopted by the city. Agus, not all politicians are bad because they want also to appear smart, right? Okay, that's why they came up with this. Okay, but it begins. So you're talking about evidence, but what is the bigger picture? Is this the kind of world we would like to leave our children? I don't know how many children you have. I have 3 grandchildren, and sometimes I wonder what kind of world. So if we do not change with us, and it's kind of scary. It is really scary. So that's why we as policy analysts provide the evidence, provide the science, and even provide the anger. Now we take off from the anger and then provide the science that there is some basis. Then you now have a policy at the level of the village, in the barangay, up to the city, and the city. And of course, all the way down to the Sustainable Development Goals. So you're right. We are kindred spirits. Mexico, Indonesia, and the Philippines, right? We're all kindred spirits. We have big populations. Are you kidding? And we're also one of the worst polluters in the world. Let's face it. If you look at the data, we continue to throw garbage in the plastic. Okay, we should make, so it begins with a level of conscientization. I think Paulo Freire talks about level of conscientization, and then we provide the evidence, and then we provide the anger. Anger, really, it is not acceptable. Then we provide the evidence. So I think that's what it is. I like the example of the plastic. But the question now is it science that, hey, if it's collected at the household level, does it go all the way down? So do you have a national policy on this? And that's exactly what Adriana mentioned about the national policies and digitalization. It's all aligned. That's why are these aligned to the SDGs? Are these aligned to our respective sustainable development goals at the national level? And you and I know, I'll shut up after this. You and I know that even the United Nations, they have the regular voluntary national sector review. We have to monitor ourselves. Otherwise, we're in big trouble, and people like our child, her name Greta Thunberg, will be very angry at us. My children will be very angry at us. This is not acceptable. And for whom is digitalization, we should use it to provide science. Terima kasih banyak.
You're mute, Professor Mansour. Your mic
Yeah,
is
sorry. Thank you for the comments and questions and answers of directly. I think it's not time to go back to the Slido, the comments, because there's many questions also back to the Slido. Mas Pamuji, can you come back to the slide? I see some people raise hand, but we can come back to raise hand, but more people are asking in the Slido. This is from Aceng Lukman, Mr. Aceng Lukman, but he did not say where he's, what institution. To Ms. Adriana, the question is, in a country where people's abilities are not evenly distributed, can decentralization work? Yeah, I think it's also can also be in Philippines also, and also in Indonesia also, because decentralization is also a big issue in Indonesia and Philippines, I think. Yeah. Okay, Ms. Adriana, maybe you can come first.
Thank you to this question from Hasan Lukman. I think it's a very interesting and very relevant question, because Mexico's history has been a struggle between centralization and decentralization. But I think in a very large country like mine, decentralization should be working. But we have very consolidated public administrations in some states, and in others there are very weak public administrations. So decentralization, I think it's the best way to address national problems and local problems, because you have to push the municipal government and the local and the state government to work with their communities and with their capacities, and to improve their capacities to address their most nearest and closest problems. So I think that decentralization is not working the way it should, but I think it's the best way that Mexico is having to deal with the different problems that are appearing in our country. I have to say that during the pandemic, there was not a federal or a national strategy to address the pandemic situation. So many of the governors in the republic decided what was the best way of dealing with the pandemic situation, and they found out that they were capable of delivering public services to their communities in the best way by decentralizing the alternatives and the main decisions to address this pandemic situation. I've been working for quite a bit in the education sector, and I think that decentralization is the best way to deliver education and health services. In Mexico, we are working with this capacity building in the local and state governments.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Adriana. I think, Prof. Agus, you have to catch a flight, so can you make closing remarks before you leave? Prof. Agus has to go to the airport, I think. Yeah, please.
Okay. I think decentralization is a learning process. We can give authority to the regions, but don't forget to give the empowerment process to the region. If we are afraid of being wrong, then we never try to move forward. Let's improve what we studied and don't refer to centralization. Thank you.
Okay, let's all give a round of, sorry, Prof. Agus, do you have to go now? Or
No, yeah. Not now.
Okay.
But
okay. Okay, thank you. And then, okay, if you have to go, please let us know, and maybe you can give closing remarks before you have to leave to the airport. Okay, Prof. Vilantes, next.
Very quick. Yeah, I think decentralization as a strategy, as Mas Acheng Lukman mentioned, not evenly distributed. That's precisely the idea of decentralization, because we are not created equal. That's the role of national government, to make sure the equity. But after having said that, so the equity aspects, Don't put, I mean, Manila, don't put it in Manila, don't put it in our big cities, don't put it in Jakarta, don't put it in Yogyakarta. Give it to the, no, again, that's the role of national government. And we need evidence to show, hey, there are some poor areas. But after having said that, after we have decentralized, two possible problems. With decentralization comes accountability. With decentralization comes accountability. You just don't decentralize and then, hey, you guys are accountable. Because in my country, we have a lot of, I guess, warlords, you know, because that's a fundamental opposition to decentralization. Give them, and who will become stronger? The warlords, the big. So there has to be accountabilities. But equally important, our job as policy analysts, help develop the capacities. And that's our job. That's our job. That's why you have land. That's why we have the universities. So it's really, I guess, how balancing. Remember that I talk about the phonetic kind of Aristotle and Plato. Decentralization is not the silver bullet. We did decentralization in the Philippines in 1992. We still continue. I know you did it in 2000 and 1998 or something like that with the law, but it's not the silver bullet. But we are learning that we have to continue to develop. It is a continuous process, developing capacities, but equally important, remind them that it is also about developing accountabilities, answerabilities. With you comes the power, with you comes the answerability. And national government should learn to let go. But after having said that, you know, when we develop capacities, we just don't develop capacities of local. Because sometimes national government is so patronizing, very proud. We have to build the capacities of local people. No. National government, you also have to build your capacities. National government, central government, you also have to build your capacities. Because that is, I think Mr. Jadde mentioned that all sectors coming together. It is not a silver bullet, but it certainly is an instrument, as pointed out by Acheng, to help address inequity, but we have to have the evidence to show some are not as equal as others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question, Mas Pamuji. This comes from Miss Nanda Ikadewi, but she does not say what institution she come from. To all speakers, the use of social media tools can provide information about citizens' opinions, emotions, intentions, behaviors, and characteristics. The question is, how does these different inputs contributes and formulates in public sector improvement, public service provision, and decision making? Okay, I think the question is clear. Who would like to go first? Okay, Miss Adriana, ladies first again.
Go first,
Ladies first again.
How does these different inputs contribute and formulates in public sector improvements and public services provisions and decision makings? I think it's very relevant, the use of social media tools. I think that there's this controversy about the social media tools, but they do provide information about the citizens' emotions, but also the citizens' needs for any kind of public services. There are a lot of local governments that uses social media tools to to know about what public services are not working, and they can give a very quick response to their citizens and to their electors, because we do not have to forget that in Mexico, the municipal levels, as well as the governors and the president, they are elected. So when they build a very solid government that responds, and a very efficient government, they will be re-elected in the municipal level. But re-election is forbidden by constitution in the state and in the national level. So the use of social media tools is a very interesting strategy that many of the governments in the whole country are using to also to incorporate what what is the feeling of their constituencies to a strategy or to a public policy, so they can change and they can redefine the design of a public policy or the implementation of a public policy. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Adriana, next.
Or can I?
Yes, or Agus, do you want to go
I
first?
think,
Or
Alex is
Dr.
okay.
Agus.
Alex.
okay, Alex, okay.
Okay, terima kasih, Agus. But as Agus mentioned, the tool is the tool is the tool. It can be used positively or negatively. I think we all know that. But number two, we all go and use, all of us around the room are familiar with fake media, fake news. It's that's what Donald Trump, I think, has been talking about. So I think what's important for us as policy analysis is two things. One is the evidence, but equally important, and this goes on to the broader picture of public administration, developing a critical mindset among our people. Developing a critical mindset. Don't just accept things as they are. Always ask the question behind the question. If you see something, don't just say, hey, plastic, 80%. Is there any other evidence? You know, so it's really, as we say, how would you put it, triangulating. And that's what evidence is all about. So I think the whole idea is, sure, policy analysis sometimes is very, very staid, very scientific, cold. But at the end of the day, you and I know public administration is also an art. It is a science, but it's also an art. The art is, what is the question behind the question? What is the question behind the question? Critical thinking. That's why we, I think, as policy analysts should not just accept things as they are. Use counter tools to do this. But yeah, digital tools, that's great. Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, and that's I think what an artificial intelligence cannot replace, the critical thinking. It cannot. I don't know. I don't think it can replace that, because that's where you bring in your values. That's where you bring your values, your thoughts. You know. And of course, AI cannot do that. AI can only do so much. Maybe it can, I don't know. But for me, I think this is where values comes in, the human relations aspect. So it's also an art and also a science.
Thank you. Next, Professor.
Okay. Yeah, as I said before, that with the presence of social media, we need to learn many things. We must know there is new phenomenon that we must understand. And there are aspirations that arise quickly. Of course, we must have tools to capture this kind of aspiration. After that, how do we adopt it into public policy and services? So we need tools to understand, and then we need speed to respond, to the aspiration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the three speakers. There's many questions. I have to go maybe quick to their they're eager to ask questions. Okay, next one, Mas Pangmuji. Maybe we skip this one. This is Mas Rajeshwasan. I think he asked the first one. Skip this one, I think. Okay. This comes from Ms. Fitri, the Ministry of Agriculture. To all speakers, policy in Indonesia is complicated because of the strong political influence. Regarding the policy of digitizing food data, how is it implemented in your country? Okay, it's about food. Okay. Who would like to come first? Or maybe the question is about food. I don't know.
No,
maybe
I can't say that. Okay,
okay.
very quickly.
Yeah, yes.
Like all of us around the room, we are an agricultural country, all of us are agriculture. But the question now is, I guess we go back, I'm sure you've heard it a million times. What is the evidence? You know, at one point, my country, we used to export rice, but now we're importing from Vietnam and also from Thailand. But the question is, should it have been that way? And what was the policy? So do we move to high-level crops? So I think it's very, very important. And the policy of digitizing food data is very, very important. What is it? Or equally important, the question behind the question, ownership of land. Who owns the land? Are many of these being converted into subdivisions? Because as you're converting this to subdivisions housing, the agricultural land becomes smaller, see? And I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm not saying it's right. All I'm saying is that is where government comes in. That is where policy comes in. That's where government said, hey, excuse me, we used to do this. Now what's happening? Why we used to import, why we're now exporting? So now our government today, under this new administration, is now talking about a variation of self-reliance, of self-sufficiency, because going back to the problem of exporting, see, and importing. So that's a very, very important point from B3, Minister of Agriculture, digitizing, and our Minister of Agriculture is doing that. But yes, it is a tool. It is a tool. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. Because at the end of the day, the ministers, at the end of the day, the president has to make the decision, but from our evidence. And that is where policy making comes in. It is also a science. So we're doing that also in the Philippines. Whether we're successful or not, we're moving in that direction. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Adriana.
Thank you. I think it's a very interesting question for a country like Mexico that has a very powerful neighborhood in the north, and that we have a very well-known trade agreement with the United States. And of course, the complications of these relationships between Mexico and United States in the digitizing food data is very, very complicated. And because it has to deal with the interests of the United States, but many times these interests are against the interest of the food sector and the agriculture sector in Mexico. So, of course, these complications of the political influence and the decision-making of food public policies or agriculture public policies is very defined by this relationship between Mexico and United States and the international trade agreement between Canada, United States, and Mexico.
Okay. I think this is not just data or digitization. This is talking about the political economy. This is talking about the interest of many parties. So policy analysts are faced with this political complexity. Of course, this is not easy to solve rationally alone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the three speakers. I think we can open questions again. I saw somebody raise questions, so we can go back and forth to the Zoom questions who raised hand, and also to the Slido. I saw somebody raising question, Miss Hasibuan or something. Did you raise questions? Did you raise your hand? Or anybody else want to ask questions directly? Because some people maybe would like to ask directly. I saw somebody raise their hand. Or, okay. Maybe they canceled the question, but if somebody or the floor on the Zoom would like to ask questions, please raise your hand also, so we do not always go to the Slido, because some people might have they like the questions directly, but some people like to ask written. But don't worry, the questions in Slido is so many, so we are coming one by one. Okay, maybe Mas Pamuji, we can come back to the Slido. Oh, anonymous, mysterious, mysterious guest. Okay, but actually, maybe it doesn't want to be known their identity. The question is to all speakers: how to maximize the role of a policy analyst when it is not supported by facilities and infrastructure in the workplace? Question. Okay, please. Who would come first? Alex? Pak Agus? Adriana? Okay, Alex, please.
Oh, no, I said, Adriana would like to go ahead.
Oh,
But yeah, sometimes the government is I think the question behind the question there is sometimes instead of government as an enabler, it becomes a disabler. And sometimes, as I said in my own presentation earlier, the whole idea is there's no appreciation of our role as policy analysts, And sometimes, let's face it, sometimes policy analysts, especially technocrats, can be used to legitimize things that are not necessarily for the people. So like I said, it can be both ways. See? And what's the evidence? And the whole notion, there's technocracy, the powers in the technical skill. And if it's not supported by the infrastructure, I don't know if you're talking about the leadership or you're talking about facilities. I really don't know, but I think it is really, I guess, a challenge for us as policy analysts. But I think the whole idea is our most important powerful tool is still the evidence. And as you know, in policy analysis, we just don't present one side. We present options. Our job as policy analysts is really, hey, Mr. Minister, these are the options. And as you know, not doing anything is an option. Doing something is an option. Coming in between is an option. Our job as policy analysts is to provide them options. And guys, Mr. Minister, you decide. Because after all, you're the politician and you got, because for whom? So that's why we are scientists also. Okay, so we provide options. I think that's just my little contribution. Thank you very much.
Okay.
yes, Pak
Yeah,
Agus.
that's a problem for everyone in our countries. That's not just the case for policy analysts. Researchers, planners, lecturers, teachers, and others, I think they can face the same problem. Thank you.
Ms. Adriana?
Thank you, Professor Mansour. I think that the best way to maximize the role of a policy analyst is to create the data and the information that will consolidate the public policies that are implementing in their organizations or in their ministries, because policy analysts have to work with this kind of confrontation between the people who just follow the politicians in the organization, but they also have to provide the politicians and the decision makers with data and information that would lead them to the best choices and to the best ways of creating value for the people. So I think that how to maximize the role of a policy analyst by their results and the evaluation of the public policies, and that will give the evidence to the politicians, but also to the public, to their communities, that the policy analyst work is creating this value.
Thank you. I think time is running up, I think. So we end up with one question. Sorry, Alex. Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
I'll shut up after this. As I said, yes, we provide options, but of course we provide a recommendation. Mr. Minister, this is our recommended. Now, if he listens, okay. So we have options. Okay, so we have our job as policy analysts also to provide the recommendation, and that's where hey, for whom is this? If they listen to us, that's fine. If they don't listen to us, we've done our job. Sorry, thank you.
But
Okay, I think
I have to say, listening to Professor Brillantes, that sometimes the policy analysts are not well prepared to listen to a no and listen to a negative answer from the decision makers. So we have to learn that this is a possibility, and we have to share more information on, or to redefine our recommendations and our alternatives to align with the political sense and the political sensibility of the decision makers.
So it's also strategic. You are so right. We have to be strategic and find out, hey, what is it that will also advance your quote unquote political agenda? Yeah, thank you very much for that enlightening point. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we have one final question because we cannot address all the questions because time is running up, I think. From the Slido, please, Mas Pamuji. This is from Miss Dara Pratiwi from the city government of Balikpapan. Yeah, from Kalimantan Island. Questions for all speakers. What do you think about the development of digitalization that supports policies implemented by policy analysts in developing countries like Indonesia? Will the trend be positive or vice versa, given the mindset of the Indonesian people, which is of course different? Thank you. This is about, yeah, the mindset also, I think. Is it positive, negative? Yeah. I think this would be our last question before we have a closing remarks. Okay, thank you. Who would like to come first? Miss Adriana?
Yes, sure. I think that these trends are they have both sides. There are an audience that thinks that it's a very positive thing that the implementation of this digitalization strategies run by developed countries is very positive, but in the other hand, there are a lot of groups that think that it's an intervention, it's a way of losing our independence. But I think that this is kind of an ideological position. I think that we should address that the knowing best practices of different countries is a very good thing to do and to promote, because learning from Europe, United States, and also having some funds for implementing some policies of this kind. I think it's positive, and it can bring us very interesting consequences. But we have to also identify the possibility of learning through our own mistakes and learning through our own implementation and learning through our own evaluations. So I think it's a positive way of interaction between developed countries and developing countries. And I also find it very interesting to have this interaction between countries like Indonesia, like Philippines and Mexico, that are very much alike, and we need to know what are the best practices in your country. I find Indonesia very interesting, a very powerful economy, and also I think that Mexico and Philippines are very linked by a wide and ancient history, and I think that this kind of interaction between countries, it's really positive.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
Then Dr. Agus will, I guess, go with the closing remarks. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm grateful for this opportunity. And like I said, Mexico, the Philippines were very much intertwined. Our language, even our customs, manana habit. Are you kidding? Okay, but number two, Indonesia, we're very much close to each other. I mean, even our humor about our politicians, right? We all make fun. They said one time that when the politicians speak, that is pollution. But when you throw them in the river, that is the solution. I remember that is a joke from Indonesia. Okay, so anyway, we're very close to each other, and digitalization puts us closer. But yeah, it's there. It is a tool. We should not romanticize it. It is not the solution, because the solution can also be the problem. It's there. We have to use it. Let's not romanticize it. But it can be a good decision-making tool as a management, efficiency, economy, effectiveness, but it's also a tool for equity. That question earlier about focusing on the outside, I think that's very, very important. But it can be a tool for equity. After having said that, it can also be a tool, as I said in my presentation, it's a tool to bridge. But equally important for me, the next aspect of inequity in the world is really the digital divide. You know, Africa, South, and even internally. How do we bridge that? I think that's very, very important. And let's not kid ourselves, because at the end of the day, we ask for whom? It is there. You're talking about it as a tool. It is a trend. It is a positive trend, but it can also be a danger. And that's where we as policy analysts come in. But a policy analyst with a heart. So it's important that it's a science and an art. Knowing for whom, I think, is very, very important. So thank you for this opportunity. Great to see my friends from Mexico. Thank you very much. And of course, terima kasih banyak to you. Thank you.
Prof. Agus?
Muchas gracias, I forgot to say.
Closing, yeah?
Yeah, but
Okay.
yes, sir.
Thank you to all who have listened to the presentation, and I think we are learning to increase our capacity. I learned from Mexico, I learned from the Philippines, and we learn from each other. We hope that the policy analysts present here will always be successful. And I'm from IAPA, Indonesian Association for Public Administration, of course, ready to help all of you to improve our competence. Not just you, but also our members. And we need very close cooperation. Thank you.
Professor
Okay,
Mansur, I just want to thank this great opportunity. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Jogis Woman, for inviting me. I always enjoy to have this interaction with the Indonesian professionals and policy analysts. So I hope there will be a very next one opportunity to share with you and to learn from you. Thank you very much, and thank you for to all the audience that are joining us this night. It's very impressive talking about digital transformation. This kind of audience will be very difficult to have in the pre-pandemic times, and I think that this digital transformation is an evidence for all of us.
Yes, I think
so much.
we should thank everyone. We should all thank our panelists who give us a very wonderful talk, I think, not just inspiring us and always challenging us to move forward, that the future lies more than just digitalizing itself. We have to change ourselves, especially the countries of Mexico, Philippines, and Indonesia, where we have a large population. We have a divided in between maybe in Mexico City and other region areas, maybe in Manila and other regions, also in Jakarta and other regions. We also face this situation, and there's some similarities. I think I cannot put everything in a nutshell, but I still remember the dichotomy of politicians and administration, and Plateau Socrates, and how transparency, openness, accountability, and the role of big data. And I think that there's too much if I were to say. So to end it all, let's give a big round of applause to our three panelists. Yeah, Miss Adriana, Prof. Vilantes, Prof. Agus, yeah, and also Pak Yogi, who is made this all happen, and also to Tanato Foundation, and also to all the participants in Zoom. Yeah, I think the questions, I'm sorry that there are some questions that we cannot forward, but we still hold them in the Slido because of time. And I think, yeah, thank you very much. Also, Miss Adriana, I know it's about maybe how much, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. in Mexico?
Yes, it's late at night.
It's late, yeah, so maybe sleepy. And I think, Alex, it's about
There's
maybe
no
1 hour,
problem.
12, about
Yeah,
11,
1
yeah,
o'clock.
12, yeah, about the same, but Indonesia one, and then Indonesia about 12. So I think it's time for our break. And to end, I think I will give back the floor to the MC Reni, but we should make the last applause to everybody, and please give applause to, yeah, thank you one more time. Yeah, looking forward. Okay, please, Mbak Reni, can you continue?
Okay. Thank you so much, Bapak Muzani, for moderating the plenary session. Ladies and gentlemen, we almost reached the end of this fruitful discussion. But before officially closing today's event, we would like to remind all participants to fill out the evaluation forms through the link shared by the organizer via chat feature. We also would like feedback and insight from all the participants on the Policy Analyst Virtual Public Lecture that we have conducted. So we encourage all the participants to fill out the satisfaction survey by using the link which also shared in the chat box. E-certificate can be downloaded from the following link. Maybe the host can display the link for the e-certificate. Okay, this is the link to download the e-certificate. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by thanking once again to our keynote speaker, guest of speakers, moderator, Tanoto Foundation, and all participants for your contribution and also participations. Thank you for joining this webinar via Zoom and also our YouTube channel. I hope you find today's event informative and engaging. Stay safe and stay healthy. I'm Reni signing off. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, Adriana.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
Everyone.
very much.
Alex.
Terima kasih banyak.
Thank you, Yogi. Thank you, Professor Angus.
Hope to see you
Professor
soon.
Vilantes.
Adriana. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih juga.
Very nice to meet you.
Muchas gracias, amiga.
Muchas
Muchas gracias a ustedes. Hablan muy bien español todos.
Sí, sí.
Bye bye, buenas noches.
Bye.
Hasta la vista, amiga.
Hasta la vista, profesor Vilantes.
Yo te amo. Just joking.
We
Okay.
love you.
Yeah.
too.
Yes.
Hasta luego.